Hi, welcome to the math stage. In today's video, we'll be looking at how to multiply and divide in standard form. We've looked at an introduction to standard form and how to add and subtract in standard form previously. And today we're doing multiplication and division. The links for those two videos will be in the description below. Make sure to check them out. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and definitely subscribe for more videos. Let's get started. When multiplying and dividing in standard form, it's pretty simple. Let's look at a first example as I explain. Here we have 2.4 times 10 raised to the 7th power being multiplied by 5.2 times 10 raised to the 3rd power. The first thing we would want to do here is go ahead and rearrange the problem. We're going to group the index parts and the non-index parts. Let's go ahead. So grouping, we would have 2.4 times 5.2 times 10 raised to the 7th power multiplied by 10 raised to the 3rd power. Here, we've rearranged. Now we're going to multiply both parts. We're going to multiply 2.4 by 5.2 and 10 to the 7th power by 10 to the 3rd power based on the laws of indices for this section. Remember, the laws of indices that govern multiplication says a raised to the m power times a raised to the nth power is equal to a raised to m plus n. So you would add the indices. Let's go ahead and work these out. So 2.4 times 5.2 is 12.48. Put back our multiplication sign, so 10 to the 7th times 10 to the 3rd would give us 10 raised to 7 plus 3. And this would be 12.48 times 10 to the 10th power. Now, let's look at this carefully. Is this standard form? No. This is not standard form. Remember, the a value in standard form has to be greater than or equal to 1 but less than 10. 12.48 is greater than 10. As such, we need to find a way to let this become standard form. Now, 12.48 is equal to 1.248 times 10. So now we are going to substitute the 12.48 for the 1.248 multiplied by 10. So we're going to put all of this in space of this. And we end up with 1.248 times 10 times 10 to the 10th power. Here we have 10, which would be raised to the 1st power, being multiplied by 10 raised to the 10th power. So we're going to multiply these, and we know we'll be adding the indices to give us an answer of 1.248 times 10 raised to the 11th power. And this would be our final answer. 1.248 falls within the range of A. As such, this is a valid answer and this is standard form. So this is the first example. Let's do a couple more like this, then we'll move on to division. Now our second example, we have 3.4 times 10 raised to the 7th power multiplied by 4.5 times 10 raised to the negative 4th power. So here we're going to do the same thing, group the index and the non-index parts first. Now, we've grouped the index and the non-index part, so we're going to go ahead and multiply. How are we going to multiply? We're going to say 3.4 times 4.5, and we're going to say 10 to the 7th times 10 to the negative 4th power. Remember, when we're multiplying these, we're adding the indices, so watch out for this negative sign. Let's go. So 3.4 times 4.5 gives us 15.3. And 10 to the 7th times 10 to the negative 4 will give us 10 raised to 7 plus negative 4. And after we've added these indices, we would end up with 15.3 times 10 raised to the 3rd power. Again, let's look at the answer we have here. Is this standard form? No. This is not standard form. Why? Because 15.3, which would be the A value, is greater than 10, and the A value has to be greater than or equal to 1 but less than 10. So let's go ahead and make this now standard form. Remember, 15.3 would be equal to 1.53 times 10. Now we're going to insert this 1.53 times 10 and take out 15.3. So we're replacing this. So now we have 1.53 times 10, because it is equal to 15.3 times 10 to the 3rd power. This 10 would be raised to the 1st power. So here we're multiplying 10 to the 1st power by 10 to the 3rd power. And we know we would add the indices. Let's see what we come up with. So now we have 1.53 times 10 to the 4th power. And this is definitely standard form. As such, this is your final answer. Let's look at another example. Okay, so a third example. 3.3 times 10 to the negative 3rd power multiplied by 6.6 times 10 to the negative 6th power. Looking at it, we already know that the first thing we're going to have to do is rearrange it and group the non-index parts with the non-index parts and the index parts with the index parts. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we have 3.3 times 6.6 times 10 to the negative 3rd power times 10 to the negative 6th power. We're going to go ahead and we're going to multiply. 3.3 will be multiplied by 6.6 and 10 to the negative 3rd power by 10 to the negative 6th power. Remember, watch for the signs here since both of them are negative. Let's go. So 3.3 times 6.6 gives us 21.78. Put back our multiplication sign, and we know that we're going to keep the base of 10 and we're going to add the indices. So it's going to be negative 3 plus negative 6. And we end up here with 21.78 times 10 raised to the negative 9th power. Again, looking at this, we know that this is not standard form. Standard form, no, no, right? So we're going to have to put this now in standard form. And we know that 21.78 is equal to 2.178 times 10. Now we're going to put 2.178 times 10 into the problem for 21.78. Why would we do this? The 2.178 would satisfy the criteria for the A value, which the 21.78 does not, because this is greater than 10. Let's go ahead. So now we'll end up with 2.178 times 10, which would be 10 to the first power, times 10 to the negative 9th power. These two will be multiplying each other, so we're going to go ahead and do that to get our final answer. So we have 2.178 times 10 raised to 1 plus negative 9, which we know right here would give us negative 8. And this would be our final answer. And this is also in standard form, just pointing it out. Now, since we've looked at some multiplication examples, let's go ahead and look at division of standard form. Now, when doing division of standard form, it's pretty similar to multiplication. Just remember to apply the law of indices that speaks to division to the index parts of the problem. Let's look at these examples. So we have 9.6 times 10 to the 7th power being divided by 1.2 times 10 to the 4th power. Now, we're going to rewrite this entire problem as a fraction, meaning 9.6 times 10 to the 7th over 1.2 times 10 to the 4th power. Now that we've written it as a fraction, we can clearly see how everything would line up. We're going to go ahead and separate it. So the index parts on one side and the non-index parts. Since we've already separated, we're going to go ahead and divide. So 9.6 divided by 1.2 would give us 8. Put back our multiplication sign. And 10 to the 7th divided by 10 to the 4th. What would we do here? From the laws of indices, remember, a to the m divided by a to the n would give us a raised to m minus n. So this is going to be 10 raised to 7 minus 4. And our final answer, 8 times 10 to the 3rd power. And yes, this is standard form, and this is our final answer. Let's look at two more. Example number 5. 1.64 times 10 raised to the 8th power divided by 4 times 10 raised to the negative 12th power. The first thing we're going to do here is write this as a fraction. Let's go. We've written it as a fraction. Let's separate them. Index with index, non-index with non-index. Okay, now after we've separated them, we're going to go ahead and divide. 1.64 divided by 4 would give us 0.41. Put back our multiplication sign, and we know that this would be 10 raised to the 8th power minus negative 12. Let's see what we have. We have 0.41 times 10 to the 20th power. Two negatives make a positive, so it's going to be 8 plus 12, which is 20. Is this standard form? No, this is not standard form. Definitely not. Remember, standard form, it has to be, the a value has to be greater than or equal to 1. 0.41 is less than 1. What do we do? Well, here, to get this into standard form, we would have to multiply the 0.41 by 10. So we would then subtract 1 from the power of 10. Essentially, we're multiplying the 0.41 by one of these 10s. So we would have to take 1 from the power of 10. Okay, let's go. So multiplying this by 10, we would have 4.1. And removing 1 from the power of 10 here would give us 19. And 4.1 times 10 to the 19th power would be our final answer. Let's look at our very last example. So our very last example. 8.1 times 10 to the negative 1 power divided by 0.9 times 10 to the negative 2 power. By just looking at it, we know the first thing is to write as a fraction. So let's do that. We're going to write it as a fraction and separate them. So we would end up with 8.1 divided by 0.9 times 10 to the negative 1 power divided by 10 to the negative 2 power. Now let's divide to get our answer. 8.1 divided by 0.9 gives us 9. Multiplied by 10 raised to the negative 1 power minus negative 2. Remember, two negatives here would make a positive, so it would be negative 1 plus 2, which would leave us with 9 times 10 raised to the first power, which is also 9 times 10. And here we have our final answer. Thank you guys so much for watching the math stage. Remember, like, share, subscribe, and definitely leave a comment. I hope this video was helpful. Bye for now from the math stage.